Well, Singapore saw a sharp rise in scam losses last year, with victims losing a record 1.1 billion Singapore dollars, and that's the highest ever total recorded. It's also a more than 70% rise in losses from 2023. The number of scam reports also rose to a record high last year, with cases increasing by 10.6% to 51,501. Cryptocurrency-related scams also making up just under a quarter of total losses, a sharp increase from just 6.8% in 2023.
It's a crime of exploitation and manipulation, using deception and social engineering to trick people into surrendering their assets. Scam victims lost $1.1 billion in 2024, marking a record high amount of losses suffered in a single year. It's also a jump of over 3 times more than 5 years ago. While traditional scams like e-commerce fraud led with over 11,600 cases last year, the true impact came from rarer, more sophisticated schemes. Criminals are now targeting cryptocurrency, as it's harder to trace and less regulated. Cryptocurrency losses made almost 1/4 of all losses last year, compared to around 7% in 2023. One case even saw $125 million lost, over 1/10 of all losses. The victim clicked on fake interview links and ran a script that turned out to be malware targeting crypto wallets. It was the same scam attempted on others.
So last year, one of our staff was approached by somebody who claims to be from the blockchain industry with an offer for a job. And this approach was done on Telegram. Our staff was induced to download a software to facilitate the job interview. We immediately feedback this to our cybersecurity team, and they verified the download link and that it's confirmed that that was a malware.
Police say even tech-savvy people can fall for crypto scams. Telegram was used in another crypto scam, resulting in a loss of $21.7 million. Scams on the platform have surged by over 95% since 2023. Along with Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram, these platforms are the top choices for criminals to reach their victims, accounting for nearly half of all contact methods. Authorities are now urging social media platforms to step up efforts to curb scams, such as by implementing stricter user verification measures.
Users have to be constantly, they have a role to play in terms of educating themselves, in terms of knowing new scams that are being perpetrated, right? So constantly read the news, right? Be aware that social engineering and phishing schemes are increasingly commonplace.
Police are also on the lookout, with their anti-scam command recovering over $182 million in scam losses and preventing at least $483 million in potential losses last year.
Scams remain a key concern in 2024 as we saw an increase in total number of scam cases and amounts lost. Scammers will constantly find ways to scam us into making fast decisions. We would like to urge you to slow down, take a moment to check if you're unsure if something is a scam.
As the latest scam losses sink in, police are urging businesses, particularly banks, online marketplaces and telcos, to play a more active role in curbing scams on their platforms.
Well, scams in Singapore have been setting new records every year, with over 3.4 billion Singapore dollars lost since 2019. In a move to help victims, a 24-hour helpline was launched last year to verify suspicious calls and messages. CNA speaks to 2 individuals who narrowly avoided scams, thanks to Scam Shield agents intervening just in time.
Sir, lock your door. There's been a fake $7,000 transaction from your credit card. Don't tell anyone about this investigation.
That was the chilling warning delivered to Aidil's 63-year-old father. With scammers posing as DBS officials and police officers, they were armed with his personal details.
At that point in time, I was like, very suspicious of what was happening because no police officer would actually ask you to not talk to your family members or lock yourself inside the room. So to me, it already shows like he was actually being like scammed or something lah.
Aidil's intuition was right. He searched online and found the Scam Shield helpline and connected his father with one of its operators.
I told him that we are calling from Scam Shield. We are here to help you. But the father was still very defensive. He said that this case is very sensitive. I also told him some of the red flags. Firstly, if we are Singapore police, we wouldn't ask so sensitive information via the call. Like, for example, front and back NRIC, the selfie of yourself.
Her persistence paid off. After an hour on the line, Felicia stopped Aidil's father from sending money to the scammers. Since September 2024, Scam Shield has handled over 47,000 calls. A team of 20 agents help callers avoid scams, including recovery scams. That's where fraudsters claim to recover stolen assets for a fee or personal information. John, not his real name, has a 90-year-old aunt who lost $500,000 in such a scam. Former colleagues borrowed money from her, hoping to recover funds from a lost crypto wallet.
They had a WhatsApp video call with this Europol guy and was sharing screen over WhatsApp. And they had asked my aunt to log into her bank account. There was a Coinbase app installed and they had used her SingPass to create their account. And from her bank account, there was a transfer to the Coinbase wallet. And inside the Coinbase app, Bitcoin was bought and transferred to another Bitcoin address. It was only then that she was convinced that, or 50% convinced that this is likely a scam. And so the next day we went down immediately to the police to make a report.
The Scam Shield team say scammers often pressure victims to act fast, to isolate themselves, and to keep secrets from family. The emotional manipulation is typically the same.
They will say that, oh, do not share this information with anyone. That includes your family members. The case is very sensitive. You need to isolate yourself. After that, you will receive subsequent calls. But the subsequent calls will never be the same. The impersonation scam, the scenario might change. It can be a bank, another bank. It can be from CID, cybersecurity, the list goes on and on.
John was advised by a Scam Shield agent to secure his aunt's accounts, and a police report was filed soon after. The money may not have been recovered, but thanks to the quick intervention, no more was lost.
So, speed is crucial in stopping scams, especially when victims risk losing their life savings. To tackle this, Singapore passed the Protection from Scams Act in January, allowing police to freeze bank accounts of scam targets to reduce losses. Authorities say the move is essential as scams rise. Now, CNA speaks to the family of one victim who lost over $70,000 in a decade-long love scam.
It began over a decade ago when Madam Tan's close family member connected with an online friend through social media. But what started as casual conversations soon spiraled into a web of deceit.
I think probably she knew this person from Facebook, and I don't know how she connected with this person. And this person one day said that he needed money because he had some illness. Then in the end, this person passed away.
The scammer fabricated an entire story, claiming to be a millionaire suffering from illness. After his purported death, new characters emerged, demanding fees for inheritance claims.
They also introduced characters like lawyers, and they will send in business cards, they'll send them letters. All through WhatsApp.
The victim refused to believe she was being scammed, even when presented with overwhelming evidence, including fake documents verified by lawyers.
Because usually they are very emotionally invested. They really trust the scammers already.
One day, she actually withdrew this money from the shared account without telling us. And I discovered it. We try every angle to show her that it's a scam. Even we go to the extent of looking at the documents the scammer sent her, which is fake and all the characters fabricated.
In January, Singapore passed the Protection from Scams Act, granting police the authority to freeze suspected victims' bank accounts for up to 180 days.
We're trying to be as pragmatic as possible to really balance between protecting their assets, protecting the money, giving them the autonomy to make decisions, and really individual responsibility.
This should have been done long time ago. And it's very good that the police actually have this restriction for those victims who refuse to admit that they are victims.
But restriction orders alone may not solve the root problem, say Mr. Yeo and Madam Tan.
Sometimes just the police themselves is insufficient. We really need to draw in all the available resources we have to try to convince these victims.
As long as there are victims who are willing to believe the scammer, you will never stop. We just want to let you know that we don't condemn you, because being a victim of scammer is not a shame. We are there to support you, but just that what you need to do is to be vigilant and to believe when someone pointed out to you it's a scam.
The Protection from Scams Act takes effect this year, reinforcing the fight against fraud. But beyond laws and enforcement, the human toll remains. Police victim care officers stand ready to help, while social workers and counsellors provide a lifeline for victims and their families.
Well, for more, I'm joined by Dr. Annabelle Chow, clinical psychologist at Annabelle Psychology. Dr. Annabelle, thanks so much for joining us on this very interesting and important topic. Now, I want to talk to you first about self-affected transfers. Now, that's where individuals willingly transfer money to scammers, and that's accounted for over 80% of the scams. Now, we heard the stories.
Yeah.
It's so hard to convince somebody that they're being scammed. Why might victims be willing to believe the scammers rather than maybe their own family?
I think primarily there's a cognitive bias that we subscribe to, that I may know better. And if you think about the relationship that the victim has with the scammer, it's a unique individual personal relationship that they have, that the scammer had spent some time grooming and the scammer has spent some time interacting with the victim, and it actually attacks very core basic psychological feelings of fear, of anxiety, of loneliness, of greed, and of love. So when we are actually the one interacting with the person, we like to think that we know better than our family members who is more maybe anxious and paranoid and trying to protect us, but they're not involved in the relationship. So I think primarily there's a lot of trust, and like the reports had shared earlier, a lot of the scamming techniques actually engage in the core, appeals to trust. Yep. And actually in Singapore, very interestingly, we actually appeal to trust to authority quite automatically. So if you see like a scamming, like a website that looks like a government agency or even the police force, we are more likely to not think so much about it and respond. I
see what you mean. So we're kind of predisposed in a way to trust people that are perceived as authorities. Yeah. So you mentioned a whole range of emotions that this appeals to, trust, fear, love, things like that. But are there certain kinds of groups of people who are more likely to be scammed than others?
I think the research does show that the people who are 30 to 49 are more likely to be scammed, because 30 to 49 years old, because these are the people with the highest disposable income. I like to think that this is also the group of people with the highest responsibility, who's the sandwich generation, where you've got the young and the old to look after. You are also the most tech savvy. You spend most of the time on the computer or on the phone. Most of the shopping and everything is done online. But I also think it depends on the type of scams that happen. Okay. So for the 30 to 49 years old, you'll be looking at a lot of investment scams, a lot of job-related scams. But for the elderly, for example, they are also quite susceptible to love scams as well. They are also more susceptible to investment scams because they are not so savvy. So I think for different reasons, different groups of people are susceptible. And I think maybe a really important message to share is anyone and everyone is susceptible to being scammed and to be a victim.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I want to talk to you about the profile of the scammers, the people behind the phone or whatever, the anonymous face. What drives someone to devise a scam and become a scammer?
So I think one of the reasons would be it's a really low cost, low entry, but high reward scheme, right? It doesn't take a scammer very much to learn the script and just kind of, especially in countries where money is scarce or economically they're not doing very well, this is a really easy job. And then the returns and the rewards are really high. So we should consider the fact that, financially it's a really easy way to earn money and support the family. In terms of profile, I imagine these are all the very charming people who actually understand human psychology, right?
High EQ.
High EQ, because we live in a very busy world. We have a lot of people around us, but most of us are actually quite lonely. Most of us actually are not connected meaningfully. And if someone comes along and is really nice and really attentive and really patient, because there's a lot of grooming and a lot of waiting, people who are narcissistic also tend to be very charming. They are also the people with a high EQ, but very low on empathy. So there's a lot of they justify when they hurt people. And I've actually met a scammer, and he actually said this to me, which was a bit shocking for me. But he said, Annabelle, don't you think it's very noble of me that even though I'm scamming these people, but I've created so much employment and so many people now have jobs to come and catch us? Don't you think that's a very noble job I'm doing? So I think it's, they have it's a weird way of justifying their actions, which really suggests that they're really low on empathy levels as well.
Well, we don't have much time left, so I just want to ask you, what else can be done to strengthen people's resistance and almost vigilance against scams, given that their nature keeps changing? They keep evolving, the kind of scams.
So besides the advice of slowing down and verifying and checking and speaking to other people, I think more importantly is to have a deeper understanding of yourself. You need to understand your core psychological vulnerabilities. For example, if you had grown up in a poorer family, you're probably a bit more susceptible to anything related to money, because money would hold a different meaning to you. Or if you grew up in a family that you didn't have a lot of love or attention, then you might be a little bit more susceptible to love scams. So understanding yourself on a deeper level will help you understand your vulnerabilities. At the same time, I think you need to couple that with your current circumstances. Were you feeling stressed? Were you feeling lonely? Were you very tired? Were you very hungry, very thirsty? Primitive needs, were they met? These two things combined together would mean that you might make very quick decisions and engage in quick behaviors without slowing down and thinking.
Fascinating. I just want to ask you, in terms of what happens post-scam. Okay, so whether you might be one of the lucky ones that was saved, or you might have lost that amount of money. What are some of the social and mental impacts these scams can have, and how can we address those?
I think a very deep one is a sense of shame, because actually a lot of scam victims have some knowledge of the subject matter, and I should have known. A lot of scam victims are also professionals with a certain socio-economic standing, and it's shameful and difficult to share with others, but anyone can be susceptible to scams. And I think if as a society, if we take on a gentler approach, a more compassionate approach that allows safe sharing of our experience, it would actually help us understand this process deeper. And it will also allow that person to feel a bit more supported.
Yeah, I really appreciate your insight into all this. Thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you.
I've been speaking there with Dr. Annabelle Chow, clinical psychologist at Annabelle's Psychology